At exactly 5 a.m. on Friday morning, inside a federal prison where silence is enforced and every movement is monitored, something reportedly happened that almost no one outside those walls knows about. No breaking news, no headlines, no official confirmation. And that silence is the most unsettling part. According to information obtained by us from what we are treating as an internal but unconfirmed source, Sean Diddy Combs was allegedly involved in a violent incident inside his cell block that left him seriously injured. This information did not come from social media rumors or online speculation. It came from within a system that is designed to keep incidents contained. The alleged incident took place inside FC1 Fort Dix, a low-security federal prison located in New Jersey. On paper, it's classified as low security. In reality, it houses more than 4,100 inmates, and like any large correctional facility, tensions can rise without warning. Low security does not mean no violence. It simply means fewer barriers when things go wrong. According to the report, during early morning hours, a time when visibility is limited and staff presence is thinner, an altercation allegedly broke out inside a cell block. The situation is said to have escalated rapidly. By the time officers intervened, Diddy was reportedly badly injured enough that standard medical response was not considered sufficient. We're told a special medical team was urgently called in and treatment was administered inside the facility itself. No outside hospital transfer, no public emergency response. Everything handled quietly, behind closed doors. And here's something most people don't realize. Federal prisons strictly prohibit mobile phones, cameras, or any recording devices. That means no videos, no live footage, and no instant proof. If images exist at all, they can only exist through leaks. And even then, major media outlets usually refuse to publish anything without official confirmation. As of now, no verified photos or videos have surfaced publicly. No TV coverage, no social media posts. Nothing. So the question becomes unavoidable. If this incident was insignificant, why has nothing been said? And if it was serious, why hasn't it been acknowledged? Former correctional insiders have long explained that incidents involving high-profile inmates are often managed internally, not necessarily to protect the inmate, but to protect the institution from scrutiny. Public attention brings investigations, questions, and pressure. Silence buys time. Before going deeper into this video, make sure to like this video, subscribe our channel, and hit the bell icon. That's why never miss any new update like this. Now let's get back. What makes this situation even more concerning is the timing. Early morning incidents are the hardest to verify and the easiest to bury. Shift changes, limited oversight, and reduced movement create windows where serious events can occur with minimal documentation. The information we received suggests the injuries were not minor. They required immediate attention. Yet until this moment, the public has been told nothing at all. No statement from prison officials, no confirmation, no denial. And silence like this rarely happens by accident. This video is not making claims of certainty. It is not presenting allegations as fact. But it is highlighting a report that, if accurate, raises serious questions about transparency, inmate safety, and what truly happens inside federal facilities when the doors close and the outside world stops watching. Because once someone enters prison, status changes. Fame fades, power disappears. And what happens behind those walls often stays there, unless someone decides it shouldn't. What makes this situation far more unsettling is not just the alleged incident itself, it's everything that happened after. In federal prisons, every serious event normally creates a paper trail. Incident logs, medical records, internal reports, movement restrictions. Yet in this case, according to the information we reviewed, nothing surfaced publicly and nothing leaked through official channels. That kind of silence doesn't happen randomly. FCI Fort Dix is labeled as a low-security facility, but with thousands of inmates housed together, hierarchy and influence still exist. Informal power structures form fast. And when a high-profile inmate enters that environment, attention follows, not admiration, but tension. Names carry weight inside prison walls, and sometimes that weight becomes a target. Sources claim that after the alleged attack, the specific cell block was quietly restricted, not fully locked down, but controlled enough to prevent questions from spreading. Movement was limited. Medical staff handled everything internally. No emergency evacuation, no outside response. That decision alone tells us one thing. Authorities wanted control, not exposure. Now ask yourself this. If nothing serious happened, why avoid transparency? And if something serious did happen, who benefits from keeping it quiet? Prison systems operate on containment, not just physical containment, information containment. When an incident risks triggering public backlash, legal complications, or scrutiny of inmate safety, silence becomes the first line of defense. Another detail that stands out is the timing of the medical response. Reports suggest treatment began almost immediately, which means staff were alerted fast. That doesn't happen unless the injuries are visible and urgent. Minor injuries don't trigger special medical teams. Serious ones do, and yet still nothing. No denial, no confirmation, no reassurance. This is where patterns matter. Historically, when institutions stay silent, it's often because speaking creates more problems than staying quiet. Statements invite questions. Questions invite investigations. Investigations invite consequences. And this case carries weight beyond one person. It raises questions about how federal prisons actually handle violence, especially when the inmate involved is known worldwide. Are incidents handled differently? Are records classified differently? Are details deliberately delayed? None of these questions have answers yet. What we do know is this. Information doesn't disappear. It gets delayed, it gets restricted, or it gets buried. And when multiple layers of silence overlap, no media, no officials, no leaks, that silence itself becomes part of the story. This isn't about spreading fear or pushing unverified claims. It's about recognizing when absence of information is louder than confirmation. Because in systems built on documentation, nothing happening is often the least believable explanation. Behind prison walls, control matters more than truth. Stability matters more than transparency. And when the public hears nothing, it usually means decisions are still being made out of sight. The real question now isn't what happened at 5 a.m. It's whether the truth will ever be allowed to surface, or whether this will remain another incident that officially never existed. At this point, the focus shifts from what may have happened to what happens next, because inside the federal system, aftermath matters more than the incident itself. When a serious injury allegedly occurs, procedures quietly begin. Medical evaluations are documented. Psychological assessments are triggered. Risk classifications are reviewed. In some cases, housing assignments change without explanation. None of this is announced. None of it reaches the public. But it all leaves traces. Traces that surface weeks or even months later, usually in ways no one connects back to the original event. And that's why this moment matters. If the injuries were significant, recovery doesn't end with treatment. Pain management, follow-up checks, and monitoring would continue. That means more eyes, more staff, and more internal records. Every additional step increases the chance that something eventually leaks. Not dramatically, not loudly, but quietly, through paperwork, testimony, or legal filings. Another thing rarely discussed is reputation inside prison. Once an inmate is perceived as vulnerable, dynamics change. Attention shifts. Threat levels increase. Facilities often respond by adjusting routines, separating individuals, or moving them entirely, all without ever explaining why. So watch closely for subtle signs. Changes in housing, restricted access, delayed court filings, unusual legal motions. These are the signals institutions can't fully hide. There's also the outside pressure. When high-profile inmates are involved, legal teams monitor everything. Any sign of mistreatment, negligence, or risk becomes leverage. Silence today doesn't mean silence forever. It often means preparation. And here's the part many people miss. If nothing happened, clarity would be easy. A simple denial would end speculation. But silence invites attention. It invites analysis. It invites scrutiny. It invites questions that don't go away. The federal system depends on stability. Anything that threatens that stability, especially public scrutiny, is delayed, managed, and controlled. That's not conspiracy. That's procedure. Whether this incident is ever acknowledged publicly remains uncertain. But what is certain is this: stories don't vanish, they wait. And when they resurface, they usually do so at the moment institutions can no longer control the narrative. So pay attention not to what is said, but to what remains unsaid. Also, Mayan, not to headlines, but to their absence. Because in systems built on records and routines, silence is rarely empty. It's calculated. By now, one thing should be clear. This story is no longer about a single alleged incident. It's about control and who gets to decide what the public is allowed to know. Inside federal prisons, silence is not accidental. It's structured. When something threatens institutional stability, the response isn't chaos. It's containment. Information is slowed. Access is limited. Narratives are paused until risk is assessed. And the higher the profile, the tighter that control becomes. Think about what hasn't happened. No official denial. No clarification. No routine statement saying nothing occurred. In systems that release statements for far less serious matters, doing nothing is a decision. And that decision suggests uncertainty, not about whether something happened, but about how much of it can safely be acknowledged. Another factor rarely discussed is liability. Any incident involving injury opens doors to questions about supervision, safety protocols, and staff response. Questions create exposure. Exposure creates consequences. So silence becomes a shield, not forever, but long enough to evaluate damage. Meanwhile, inside the facility, life doesn't return to normal immediately. Tension lingers. People talk quietly. Staff observe more closely. Patterns shift. These internal ripples never reach the outside world, but they exist, and they matter. What's also important to understand is how stories like this typically surface, if they ever do. Not through dramatic announcements, not through leaked footage, but through secondary channels. Legal filings, medical notes referenced in court, housing changes mentioned in appeals, or testimony months later that suddenly connects dots no one noticed before. That's how truth moves in closed systems, slowly, indirectly, carefully. And when a story stays silent for too long, it doesn't disappear. It transforms. It becomes speculation, then analysis, then pressure, and eventually someone breaks that silence. Not because they want to, but because the cost of silence becomes higher than the cost of speaking. Right now, we are in that quiet middle phase, the phase where nothing is confirmed, nothing is denied, and attention is quietly discouraged. But history shows that this phase never lasts forever, because institutions can delay information. They can restrict it. They can reshape it, but they cannot erase it. And when silence finally cracks, it rarely does so gently. At the end of all this, what matters most is not whether headlines appear tomorrow or next week. It's what silence reveals over time. When stories are false, they collapse quickly. They get denied. They get dismissed. They fade. But when stories linger in silence, they don't fade. They hover. And hovering stories have a way of resurfacing when least expected. Right now, there are no statements, no confirmations, no denials, just a vacuum. And vacuums in systems built on documentation are never accidental. They are temporary spaces created to regain control, but control has limits. Every institution leaves footprints. Every decision creates records. Every moment of silence delays the truth. It doesn't destroy it. Somewhere there are logs. Somewhere there are reports. Somewhere there are people who know exactly what happened and are waiting for the right moment to speak. And moments change, pressure builds, circumstances shift, interests collide. And when they do, stories that were never meant to exist suddenly find daylight. This is why attention matters. Not outrage, not speculation, just attention. Because when the public watches closely, silence becomes harder to maintain. And when silence becomes costly, truth starts to move. Slowly at first, then all at once. Until then, remember this: What happens behind locked doors doesn't stay hidden forever. It waits. And when it returns, it usually brings more questions than answers. Stay alert. Stay aware. Because the most important details are often the ones no one talks about.